Hello, class. I haven't had a chance yet to do a video with you all, so I thought maybe I would do one. I have enjoyed reading through your week 2 submissions. I know you're completing your week 3 submissions right now, but I thought I should give you some feedback. Again, thank you once again for your work. This is a very fast-paced course. There's an awful lot of stuff in the textbook, and I know it probably feels overwhelming. And to some of you, it probably feels like you're not retaining all of it. Get as much as you can, grab some tidbits. It will make a difference as you move on. I know that you probably know as well that there are a lot of mediocre managers out there, a lot of managers that have done really well at the task. They've risen up through the ranks, they have a few tools in their toolkit, and pretty much they don't grow from there. They've got a bag of tricks and they use those tricks every time. Limited abilities to analyze the situation, come up with new solutions, not growing. Those oftentimes are not good managers to have. You've probably heard the phrase before that when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Well, that's probably somewhat of the case here, and you've had a chance. Now, once again, stick with the textbook. You're going to find that the textbook has looked at the very best research. You'll find lots of articles out there. There are lots of ideas that have come and gone. The textbook looks for the ones that really matter. Pay attention to the instructions. I noticed that some of you are not answering the questions as they're presented. A lot of discussion of a case or a scenario, but the questions are pretty specific, and we'll be looking for specific answers. Um, Pay attention to word count. The quality is more important than quantity. Simply filling up word space isn't the issue. However, when you get a 300 word count for a discussion forum, that gives you some idea of the level of depth that's being sought. It doesn't mean that you necessarily have to have that many words. I usually have students that go over. If the word count is 300 and you have less than 200, then you are probably not doing a good enough job of going into the details of the particular question or theory or subject matter. I thought too that I might comment on just a couple of things. SMART goals. You'll be working on those the rest of your lives. It's hard to get all of the components of a SMART goal in at the same time. Though I trust that most of you have at some point or another had a manager who gave you unclear instructions, had an unclear goal. Some of you have probably been blamed for not meeting an objective that wasn't clear. SMART goals help you for you personally and also for your management to come up with a system where you can clearly identify what you plan to do. It has to be something you can do. It has to be something that is measurable. You've got to have time places for when it starts, when it ends, and sometimes even intermediary. Um, it's got to be achievable and so on. So keep working on those. It'll take a little bit of time to get those right. It will pay off in your management experience. Finally, leadership styles. That's one of the probably the best things that you can do in a leadership or management course. And the list of leadership styles in this textbook are good. Many of you sort of stopped at page 317 with a laissez-faire, autocratic, and democratic styles. When you tried to go and apply those, though, you probably saw that they're not really applicable. There's not enough there for you to actually implement these. And that's probably why, even though they're called basic, that doesn't mean major or most important. They're the most, the ground level, if you like, these don't give you a lot of help. By the way, I've got son Conyers here interrupting me. Um, Also, the research has shown that these three by themselves are not effective. They don't lead to help. So probably most of you have had at one point or another an autocratic manager who just dictated, and that was terrible. Have any of you all had a democratic manager where everything was sort of decided by majority vote? That doesn't work either. But the other theories that come after page 317 can sort of relate to, in one way or another, those three styles. And so those are the ones that are actually implemented. Now, if you look past 317, probably some of the theories that are most talked about these days is the transformational leadership style. Transformational leadership style is a great thing to study. Put that, understand that well enough to be able to implement it. But a transformational leader is a charismatic leader, but a charismatic leader has lots of flaws, and there's a terrible downside to charismatic leadership when the ethics go wrong or when the personality becomes overwhelming. A transformational leader is able to inspire people, but he has high ethics. She has high commitment. The transformational leader then sees potential in the followers and develops them and leads toward the future, not just by developing systems, but also by developing people. It's a great theory. Two others that are oftentimes talked about are goal path and contingency theory. Both of these are much more complicated. They're great steps to go through, and you could read whole books on these alone. These look at the task, they look at the person, and they recognize that not all good leaders are good for all situations or concepts. So the idea there is that the leader needs to know which leader to put in which situation based on certain specific characteristics. A very helpful tool for a leader that understands them. Now, a couple of my favorites in here may not be the ones that are most talked about. I particularly like situational leadership. Hershey Blanchard. What they say is that all tasks have a high relationship uh, demand, or they have a high task demand. If you start out with a person who's at a very low level, probably the relationship isn't quite that important. You tell them what to do. And at that level, telling them what to do, if you tell them clearly, helps them to understand it. But as they grow up, the relationship increases. You bring them alongside of you, and you allow them to participate in the decision making that you lead. And then you end up lowering some on the task on your side, put the task on the follower, and let the follower then lead, and you take a back seat and go into advising. And finally, you go to low task, low relationship, and allow the person to go off on their own and do their own thing, and you delegate and you check back. Also, a thing that's interesting about Hershey Blanchard is that it says that different leaders have a preferred style. And if you lead according to what feels good to you, you're going to end up not helping your subordinate. So you want to be able to understand that if you feel most comfortable being directive, as your subordinate starts to grow, you're going to find that you truncate his growth because you're directing too much. So you have to learn how to back off, and you have to learn which person needs more intense help and which person you can back off a little bit on. Another one I really like is servant leadership. This is leading by ethics, leading by example, leading by kindness. Um, Wonderful theory. There are a couple of other theories here. Fifth discipline, I'm sorry, fifth level leadership that I really like that's not in the textbook. A primal leadership by Daniel Goleman is not in the textbook. But hopefully you'll look back at these and just increase the size of your toolbox. Put more tools in there so that you'll be able to analyze a situation and bring new ideas to bear on the situations. Anyway, hope you get a great deal out of the course. I know it's a lot of work, but I hope you're going to be inspired and see some things that will make you a better leader. Thanks.